I didn't have my phone. I don't even have my phone. Where's my phone? Hey, go get my phone. Somebody. I need my phone. My Bible's on my phone. The article I want is on my phone. Isn't it amazing? Isn't technology cool? Some of y'all don't like it, but I think it's cool. I like that I can send myself stuff to my phone and I can have it. Yes, Sister Vic?
I gotta let everybody know that Ralph has finally got back surgery scheduled for September the 19th.
Praise the Lord. Amen. He's the cardiologist wasn't going to let him do it, right? And then they said, you're good. And so that's good. God's good to you. I'm proud. I'm just glad that God's doing some cool things in your life, and God's taking care of it. I just need the phone, baby. But we're going to talk about the next generation for just a minute. I'm a next gen guy. I'm always looking about 20. I don't See, that's why I need a kid to go get it. Oh my goodness. Okay. I just need the phone. I'm always looking 20 years in the future, because in 20 years I'm gonna be old, and so I don't want to. And I want to make sure that we are taken care of, and I want to make sure that we do some stuff that is just conducive to helping our next generation. I'm going to just share a few things with you, and some of you are going to like it, some of you aren't. It's okay. Back in the day, Planned Parenthood had this philosophy: if I can stop the black children from being born, I'll wipe out that race. You may not like that, but that's the case. And I can wipe out that race. And so the lady that started Planned Parenthood, her underlying thing was to eliminate the black race by having those children aborted. And you can argue with me about it, but I've read and studied the articles. I know what this lady, what her underlying thing was about. And so she had it right about, if I can affect the children, I can affect the generation coming up. If I can affect what's going on in the lower generation, I know some of y'all get quiet real quick, because if I say something about your political party or something, then you get all offended. I can call Jesus a left-handed booger eater and you don't care. But if I say something about a Democrat, you get upset, or a Republican, you get upset. That's just ridiculous to me. The truth is the truth. And so here's the deal. Here's the deal. They had it right. They had it right. Is if I can affect the children, I can affect the generation coming up. Adolf Hitler, they were called the Hitler Youth. If I can affect them now, I can affect their generation coming up behind them. If I can touch them now, I can touch the generation coming up. And so the reason I bring all that up is this: a generation is about a 30-year gap. About a 30-year, every 30 years is a generation. Estimated, okay? Don't lay it down and say, no, it's not, it's 50. Whatever, 30 years, okay? Listen, I'm 49 years old, I'm about a generation and a half. I'm a Generation Xer. What's a Generation Xer? Born between 1965 and 1983. A Generation Xer is, we were called latchkey kids. What does that mean? That means Mom and Dad were both working, we came home to an empty house and a television. I want my MTV. Grew up. As soon as I got home, man, boom. Oh, we didn't need to do that. Click. We didn't have a remote. That remote from rich people. We clicked. Okay, and we had, and I don't know if you guys knew this or not, but with cable back in the day, had a little slider thing that you changed. And so we'd slide it into an MTV, and then we'd spend all day, all evening, watching MTV and eating after school. Lord have mercy. After school, I got church on the brain. So I'm a Generation Xer. The generation coming up behind us was the millennials. The millennials that's the generation after me. And so the millennials think differently than I do. But my generation was different. The generation I had was a whole lot different, and I was about the last generation that really got to be a kid, where you got to just run around and go play. And nobody knew where you were at, but you knew what time to be home. Everybody in town knew who you belonged to. And so if you did something stupid, you would get told on. But you got to actually like ride your bike. I know that's a novel idea, but we got to like ride our bike around town. That's why I know every alley, back road, path in this town, okay? It's because we rode our bikes everywhere, and we didn't have to worry about some freak picking you up and killing you. We just actually got to be kids. And so I'm about the last generation to really get to be kids and get to just when it got dark, you knew you had to be home. And so you just did that. Gone all day long. Just running around, barefoot, no shirt, cut off jean shorts, and here we go. No money, and money you didn't have, you stuck in your shoe. Amen? Amen. You know, nobody, okay. Just letting you know. So that's what we did. And so, from that generation to about now, it's been about 20 years, 25 years, whatever, it's been 30 years, whatever, 40 years, I don't know how long, it's been 40 years? And so it's been 40 years. That generation, when's the last time I had, okay, 40 years. Okay. It's been about 40 years. And in that time period, things have changed a little bit. Things have changed a lot. Now you can't let your kid go 2 blocks without watching them.
Right.
You don't know if they're ever coming back again. You don't know. Listen, you can't even leave your car unlocked in your driveway at your house. Because someone will break into it and steal something out of it. And then wonder why you get mad. Well, if you didn't want me to steal it, you should have locked it. Okay, you're an idiot. Okay, so and then wonder why people get mad because people break into stuff and they get shot. Okay, that's my stuff. And people get mad about that stuff, and they get irritated. That generation thinks so much differently than my generation did. Have you ever heard of the 414 window? You know what a 414 window is? 85% of conversions happen between the age of 4 and 14. Conversions into Christianity. 85% happen. This is a Barna group survey. Pew Research is a little different. I think they say 82%. But Barna is 85%. 85% of all conversions into Christianity happen between the age of 4 and 14. That's amazing to me. But think about you. When did you come to the Lord? The church kids. When did you come to the Lord? 12? 10? 8 years old? When's the first time you really had an experience with God? Was it at an early age? Mine was. I believe I was 12 years old when I really had my first real encounter with the Lord. About 12, 10 or 12, something in that area. I asked Naomi before, I said, do you remember when you got saved? She said, no, I just really don't remember. It's always worked. Now me, I can remember that experience because I remember at 10 or 12 years old that I actually understood what it meant to be saved and what it meant to go to the altar and give my heart to the Lord. I actually understood. So the 414 window is simply from the age of 4 to 14, 85% of all conversions happen. If a conversion happens, 85%, and that's the entire group. If a conversion happens, it's children 5 to 13, they have 32% probability of accepting Christ. 5 to 13. You understand what I'm talking about there? There's 2 different statistics. Of the 85%, 32%, 5 to 13. You with me? Teenagers, 14 to 18. They have a 4% probability of giving their heart to the Lord. That's sad. Adults, 19 plus, 6% probability of giving their heart to the Lord after the age of 14. Now, I'm not saying that we should quit fishing for adults or teenagers. I'm not saying that at all. That's just stupid to say that. Don't put words in my mouth. What I'm saying is this, is sometimes you need to fish where there's fish.
Amen.
How many fishermen we have in the house that like to go fishing? I like to fish, I just don't ever get to go fish. Okay, if you told me there's a 32% chance of fishing here and catching something, or a 4% chance over here, I'm going to the 32%. Now I'm not giving the 4% a chance because I'm going to be one of the 4%. But I'm going to fish with this 32%. I'm going to fish there. So what does that mean? Does that mean that we don't have any chance of winning that generation? No, I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is that we have a generation that's coming up that we owe, hang on, I get to give my, we owe some respect to, that we've overlooked for a while. They're just kids. I just want to share with you just a minute, and you guys, some of you are going to like it, some of you aren't, that's okay. I just want to share with you, for so long we've put the emphasis on they're just kids. Oh, I can't stand it, they cause trouble, they're loud, they're all this stuff. In Minnesota is closing churches like crazy. There's 150-year-old churches that are closing like crazy. 100-year-old churches that are closing. There's a church in LaSalle, Minnesota that is closing after August. They're having their centennial celebration, and they're closing their doors forever because there's 22 people and the youngest is 70 years old. And they were interviewing a lady. She said, don't ever say those kids are so loud in your church. She said, don't ever say that. Yeah. Does that mean we don't discipline them? No. Does that mean we don't tell them to sit down? No. Does that mean, no, we tell them what to do and how to act in the house of God, of course. But she said, I wish we had some children in our church. Some of these people have gone to that church. They were baptized in that church, confirmed in that church, married in that church, and they thought they were going to get buried in that church, but their church is closing after over 100 years because another generation hasn't been reached. For 3 generations. 3 generations have gone, and nobody reached out to the generation coming behind. That's just sad to me. I look at our church today, and I'm looking at a lot of generations in our church. I'm very blessed, and I think I don't take that for granted. I'm looking at Gabe, who's asleep, and he's, how old are you, Gabe? 14. Gabe's 14. And I'm looking at, I don't know who the oldest person is here, it doesn't matter, my mom is 85. Then I have all these ages in the middle. And I don't take that for granted. And I take that as a special thank you from God, because evidently we're doing something to reach a bunch of generations. Amen. But hear me just a second. If we don't make a concerted, direct effort to do something about the generation following, we're going to lose another generation. And if we lose another generation, I don't know what we're going to do or how we're going to look in 20 years. Come on, help me. When Gabe is 34 years old, and Gabe will get here faster than you think, I promise you. When Gabe is 34 years old, what's the church going to look like? What's it going to look like? What's the church going to be like when Gabe's 34? How about when Gabe's 24? If we don't take a concerted, direct effort to reach a generation coming up behind us. If we don't say, you know what? I have something to offer. I have something to offer a generation. Now listen, some of you don't think you have anything to offer, but that is a lie of the devil. You have a lot of wisdom to offer. You have a lot of things that you've learned, a lot of things you've walked through. You've learned so much, but you've just always been one of those people that said, well, not everybody knows that. No, everybody doesn't know that. Not everybody knows how to live for God for 25 years.
Praise God.
Not everybody knows the ups and the downs of living for God for 35, 40, 50 years. Not everybody knows that when you've lost everything and you think, God, where are you at? And you're still able to hang on to the Lord after a 40, 50-year relationship with God. See, not everybody knows that, but we need to live that out and let people see that. We got to let people understand exactly what that means is to hang on to God when all hell seems to be breaking loose in your life, and you're hanging on to God, and everybody's looking at you like, why don't you just quit? Because, Job's wife, I'm going to hang on. I'm going to hang on.
Yes.
And listen, I don't get too bad. I don't get too off on Job's wife either, because you think about this: if you lost every kid you had and everything that you had, and you lost everything, how would you react? She lost everything, and her husband was sitting there with boils all over his shaved head, and she's just like, why don't you just curse God and die? I don't give her such a hard time, because I put her in the right mindset of what would you do if you'd lost all your children. Come on now.
Amen. Come on. Preach on, brother.
Okay, all right. Matthew chapter 18, verses 3 through 6. Matthew chapter 18, verses 3 through 6. And said, Verily I say unto you, except you be converted and become as little children, you shall not enter into the kingdom of heaven. Whosoever therefore shall humble himself as a little child, the same is greatest in the kingdom of heaven. And whoso shall receive one of such little in my name shall receive of me. Last one. But whoso shall offend one of these little ones which believe in me, it were better for him that a millstone were hanged about his neck and he were drowned into the depths of the sea. Can we just talk about a generation and about a God who loves the next generation?
Amen.
Can we talk about a Jesus who's involved about a next generation? They didn't have to bring the kids, but it said that Jesus brought the child into the conversation. Jesus brought the child into the Bible says in King James Version, into the midst of them. Jesus is the one that brought the child over because he was concerned about a next generation coming up. Let me share this with you just real fast. And I'm running out of time quickly, but I'm going to preach it anyway. Listen. Just because it's not important to you right now doesn't mean it's not important to God right now.
Amen.
Just because you don't feel quote unquote led in that area doesn't mean that God's not led in that area. Just because you're not feeling like that is something you would like to do doesn't mean it's not something that God would like to do. God is looking for a generation to carry on another generation and saying, listen, here's what we have to do. For you to understand exactly what we have to do is this. Listen. You cannot say, well, God will take care of it and not do anything. We cannot say, well, God will bless them and God will take care of it and somebody will do it. No, you're somebody.
Amen.
I'm somebody. We have to take care of a generation that's coming up behind us and teach them how to be disciples of Christ.
Yes.
Teach them how to be what God has called us to be. And can I share something real fast with you? We need some people to live out a Christian life in front of them. And listen, I know this is crazy talk in church, but how about you fall in love, then get married, then have children,
Amen.
and live it out according to God's law. The way God, listen, I know we're going to get a big applause for that, but how can we just live out the Christian method of how it's supposed to be and let somebody see, to let Gabe's generation see a godly marriage?
Amen. Yes.
A godly family? How hard is that? Evidently it's hard. It shouldn't be, but evidently I would like to see Gabe see godly family. That's why I wanted to come here. I wanted to see your families. Are you perfect? No, you're not perfect. Neither am I. Our family is not perfect. We're not. But we love each other. We're walking through life together. We're doing the best we know how to do. We're trying to affect the generation behind us. We're doing the best that we can do. And I want Gabe to see that. I want him to know that, hey, that's a solid foundation. And I can build my family like that. Because within 5 to 6 years, Gabe's going to have a family. Think about that, brother. In 6 years, you're going to be 20. You're going to be 20 years old in 6 years, and you're going to have some dumb girl that you just love to death, and you're going to marry her, and you're going to marry her first, and you're going to have kids, right? Okay, you're going to marry her. You're not going to live together until you get married.
That's right.
I know that's crazy talk, but that's what God's law says. That's what His Word says to do. Can we just do what God's Word says? Grayson, how old are you? 16. 5 years. 5 years, 6 years. Grayson's going to find some little girl. I love him. Oh, he's so cute. They're going to fall in love. And I hope they do it in church. And I hope they get involved in the youth program and the adult program. And I hope they get involved with everything that they have that's going on. And they fall in love in church.
Praise God.
And they have children and they live that out. Why is that so difficult? That's not a difficult thing to do. To fall in love with somebody in church. And let God lead and direct your life. Jesus brought the children into the conversation. In Matthew chapter 19, verse 13 through 15. We just need a generation that will show somebody how to live for God. Ready? Thank you. Then they were brought up to him, Jesus, little children, that he should put his hands on them and pray. And the disciples rebuked them. Stop for just a second. And I'm not going to get the disciples too hard because they were just trying to protect Jesus from a bunch of little kids. I mean, I get it. Okay? But hear me. Sometimes as church leaders, we dismiss the very ones that God's trying to bring to Jesus. And I'm not getting on to you if you're not part of youth ministry or not. You've never been part of youth ministry. I'm not getting on to you that. I'm just telling you what I see and what I've seen in the years I've been doing this. Is sometimes we dismiss the very ones that Jesus is calling for. Because they're not old enough to understand. Yes, they are. You've gotten too old and you just made it complicated. Jesus is calling them and they're coming. They don't know what, they're just like, okay, here I am, what do you want? We've made it so complicated. Well, you need to get a haircut first. You got to get this first. Get that done first. You got to get this done. And you know, we get it too complicated. But Jesus is just calling. And sometimes the disciples will rebuke the ones that Jesus is actually calling. Go to 14. And Jesus said, suffer the little children to come unto me. Forbid them not. For of such is the kingdom of heaven. Verse 15. And he laid his hands on them and departed thence. Now I've never departed thence, but Jesus departed thence, and he laid his hands on them, and he blessed them. Church, can I share something with you real fast, and I'll leave you alone here just a few minutes. But hear me. In a generation that's consumed with what I call meism, selfies, I gotta have me time, drop the kids off so we can go to the grocery store. That's what the basket has, that little legs thing for. They clip them in there. Take your kids shopping with you, man. How hard is that? Put their legs through, boom, clip them in. They beg for everything. Tell them no.
Amen.
Yes. Yes.
Tell my child no? Yeah, repeatedly. And zip it. You're not getting anything. Quit bribing them with donuts so they'll shut up. I'm just trying to help the next generation. Sorry. You know, you act like a fool, you don't get rewarded. Anyway, just I'll get back up here and be nice. But in a meism generation, I'm not talking about, you don't have to take them on your date night with you. I'm not talking about, well, we did, but anyway. But to go to Walmart, the grocery store, and pay bills, and stick those little suckers in the car, see, let's go, man. They travel pretty easy. Stick them in there, let's go. Generation behind the millennials. This generation, Gabe's generation. They're going to bring a revival.
Praise God.
They're going to bring the revival. See, some of us are too set in our ways, and God has a hard time talking to us. Some of us are, I ain't doing that. I don't want to do that. I'm too tired. I'm too whatever. And God has a hard time speaking to some of us sometimes. But that generation who's just now trying to learn how to live for God, God can do a great, mighty work in their life. That generation that are just now trying to figure out, but you know what it takes? It takes somebody. It takes somebody to teach them. It's called discipling.
Right.
Yes.
What's the root word of disciple? They were disciples. They were under the discipline of Jesus. It's not hard. It's not hard. The hardest part is to get off your tail end
Amen.
and to go do something about it.
Right.
The hardest part is to get the courage to make that first step. And there's a song that says the first step's the longest stride. Because it's the hardest one to do. It's the first step is the hardest stride because it's so hard, it's so difficult. Now, people will tell you the church is dying, and I'm not going to tell you that because I don't believe that. I believe the way we used to do church is kind of fading out. But can I share with you, there's some young men right now that are preaching some really good things. There's some really good young ministers out there that God has raised up, and God is saving people's souls. I believe that with all my heart. But I think we're kind of dropping down in the discipleship part. But God has raised some young men up and women. God has raised them up and just changed the way church is done. And I think that's some of the things that we fight against. Is God has changed the way church is done, and we don't like the way that God has changed the way church is done. I ain't watching somebody on a video screen. You're not 21 years old. A 21-year-old will watch somebody play a video game on a video screen. Them not playing, watching somebody else play the game. Makes no sense to me. Absolutely nonsense. But they will do that for hours. Okay, not my thing. But a 21-year-old, you stick a screen up here, will be just as comfortable as me standing right here. I'm a 49-year-old, and I'm pretty comfortable with that. You know why? Because that's how I go to church. I preach at church. I don't get to sit there in church. So my church is on a computer. And I watch on a computer screen. So I have no issue with that. A lot of people have issues with that. Well, that's impersonal. Depends on how personal you want to make it.
Amen.
Doesn't personal you want to make it. Is God speaking to you? Yes. Then it's personal.
That's right.
Is God talking to me? Is God ministering to me through a computer screen? Yes, He is. I do classes online through a computer screen. I listen to things online, leadership stuff online through a computer screen. Listen, 9 important church statistics for 2018. Fewer youth attend church. Duh, no kidding. Sadly, only 28% of younger Americans between 23 and 37 attend church. Other generations, 43 to 52%. There's a cause, there's a generation. Friendly invites are more effective. Instead of me getting up here saying, you're going to hell because you're not coming to church, a friendly invite to an event captures more people to come to church than any other way, any other method. Our Wednesday night thing we're going to have, that's a great opportunity for you to invite people to church. So they can see that we're not all a bunch of, I don't know what we are, that they think we are. It's a good way to show that, hey, I can have fun and be a Christian, yes. Number 3, involvement doesn't start on Sunday.
Amen.
This is a Monday through Saturday come together on Sunday type of deal.
Amen.
Involvement happens during the week, not just simply on Sunday. Don't just call me and say, hey, you missed me at church. But you haven't talked to me all week long. Church, the 49% of the generation outside, church is not helpful. That's what they say. But 37% can tell you a negative impact of church. Just letting you know. Millennials are leaving. 59% of all millennials retreat out of church. Some of them never come back. Some of them do, but some of them don't. Churches are plateauing. They get to a certain level and they stay there. Certainly. Churches go high tech. There's a lot of people that go to church but never walk into a church building. They tithe, they give, but they never walk into a church building. They're part of a small group, so they feel connected, but they never walk in and sit on a pew. To me, that's crazy. But to a lot of people, that's not crazy. How can you really connect if you're not ever there? But they feel like they're there. And so every Sunday they watch. There's people in different states that watch Elevation. Elevation's in Charlotte, North Carolina. But there's people in California that connect with Charlotte, North Carolina through a computer, and they have watch parties where they sit at their house and have watch parties and they go to church at their house. It's actually in North Carolina, but they're having church in Scottsdale, Arizona at a watch party. I know that's crazy to us. That's crazy. But I'm telling you how church is changing, and the next generation, that's what they're doing. They're not connecting with a building. They're connecting with a church. And they're trying to connect with God through that. I'm not saying that's what we're going to do. I'm not saying that's what we need to do. I'm just trying to tell you a little bit of information about how church is changing and the next generation is changing. This generation coming behind us is they're going to start the revival. That's no, they will. But we're finally catching up here. We're finally waking up here. And we're finally going to do some things differently that we've never done in the past. I apologize to Amy and I apologize to April and my wife because for 7 years I've known there's been a problem in youth ministry and never fixed it. How y'all can handle it? Y'all are tough. Suck it up, Buttercup. Suck it up, Sailor. And I had to apologize to them because I knew there was a problem and I didn't fix it because it was just easier to let them handle it. And I had other issues to deal with. And finally I said, you know what, I'm not doing that anymore. And I got on my bike. Amen? And so we had to fix it. We're going to fix it. And we're fixing it as best we know how to do that. And I'm not saying we're going to do everything perfectly. I'm sure Wednesday we'll have some hiccups in it. But you're planning on having 250 people here. 250 people. In a little area, I'm sure there's going to be some hiccups. And so something's going to happen. And I pray that we have enough people staffed for everything. I think we do. But that doesn't mean you don't have to come. Come and help. Come carry ice. Come relieve somebody. Make some serve some hamburgers and hot dogs. Come serve. Come with a servant's heart. Don't come to be served and come, I just want to come eat hamburgers. No, come serve and then eat a hamburger in between, okay? Whatever, but come with a heart to serve. The church is so infected, not just this church, but the church, with money. What do you mean it's infected with money? We spend most of our time trying to reach those that we think can give us something instead of reaching those that God has placed right in front of you and say, you know what? I've called you to this. And we spend so much of our time trying to reach out to somebody that might be able to do something for us, we think, instead of reaching the people that, I knew it was going to be quiet. Man, I knew it was going to be quiet, but I'm going to preach it now. Listen, because I'm ready to disciple some kids. And teach them how to preach. What do you mean teach them how to preach? God does it. I understand that. But there's a cadence to preaching. There's a way to outline a sermon. There's a way to do some things and teach them how to do the right things. There's a way to live. Amen. To get up here and do this. There's a way to live right, spit wide, we used to say. But we spend so much of our time trying to appease people so they'll come back to church. Can I share something with you? If I have to appease you to get you to come back to church, then you really have some issues. And I'm not really doing you a lick of good, and you're probably in the wrong church. And I love you. But if I have to stroke your ego to get you to come back to church, there's something wrong. There's something wrong inside of you.
Amen.
There's something wrong, broken in your spirit. There's something missing. Does that mean that I'm going to treat everybody like trash? No. I love you. I'm going to treat you the best I know how to treat you. I'm going to thank you for doing a great job. I'm never going to criticize you in public for doing a bad job. I'll talk to you behind your back. No, I'm just kidding. I'll talk to you behind closed doors and say, listen, can we do it this way? I've never talked. No. I'll never get behind the pulpit and say, boy, Billy did a bad job playing that man. I'll never do that. I'll never embarrass him like that. I might take him outside and say, hey, you know, that's pretty. I need to wipe that a little bit. And you'll go, okay. Just didn't see it. It's not a big deal. Okay, I'm trying to hurry. Y'all with me? Y'all still with me? Okay. We spend all of our time, we need to spend our time making disciples in Matthew chapter 28, verse 18 in the New King James. In the New King James, Matthew 28, 18. It's the Great Commission, but this is the different one I usually read in Mark. And Jesus came and spake unto them, saying, all power is given unto me in heaven and earth. That's not it. Yeah, it is. There it is. Sorry. Go ye therefore and teach all the nations, baptizing them in the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. In the New King James, it says, go make disciples. Go making disciples. We're blessed with an abundance of potential disciples. We're blessed with an abundance of potential disciples. We have such a great opportunity to change the face of this city. If the world knows it, why can't the church get it?
Amen.
If the world knows if they change the kids, they change a nation. But we expect every kid just to grow up like you did. With a flannel graph Jesus. And a stone rolled away. And know those stories, and that just doesn't happen. It's not happening right now. But if we can affect change in the generation that's coming up, and Gabe and Grayson's, I'm about to call you Garrett, sorry. Grayson's generation, and Abby's generation, and Daly Ann's generation, and younger. If we can affect the change in them, you don't like your city? Change the generation. Well, I don't like them either. They don't like you either right now. They don't even know you right now. I challenge you. I challenge you to go to Randolph Drive with us on a Tuesday for Hot Dog Tuesday. I challenge you to see how many young people's lives you can affect in a low-income housing area where single moms have multiple children trying to figure out a way to get back on their feet. I challenge you to go see a generation that many people have thrown away and said, oh, they'll never amount to anything. They won't if we don't do something about it. It's going to be it's going to be just like it is now, even worse, if we don't do something about it. If we don't stand on our feet and be a church and call and suffer the children to come to Jesus and rebuke them not, but tell them about Jesus. Now listen, it's not about programs and it's not about flashing lights and all that stuff. It's about Him and His Word and all that stuff. I like that stuff, and don't rebuke me because of it. I think it's cool. But listen to me. It's all about what you teach them when the lights quit flashing and the lights come back up and the worship song's over. What are you placing inside of those young people to take root so when they grow up older, they don't want to go back the other way. They want to go toward Him. Now listen, I want you to just share it. I want to share this, and I'm quitting after this. We are blessed with abundance of potential disciples, and we are to evangelize all groups, not just kids, but all groups. All groups. But we have to fish where there's stinking fish. It's not complicated. Jesus said, throw your net on the other side. We fished all night. Just throw your net on the other side. Fine. So many fish, the other ships had to help because it was sinking and tearing their net. If Jesus said, to suffer the little children to come to me and forbid them not. If Jesus really said that to inherit the kingdom of heaven, you must become as a little child and be the greatest in heaven are those who can humble themselves as a child. Did Jesus really say that? It's written in red.
He did.
So I assume He said it. There's another generation, Judges 2, 10 through 13. There's another generation that knew not the Lord. And they did evil in the sight of God. And God's wrath was kindled hot against Israel. And He brought them into captivity because that generation began to worship Baal and Ashtaroth, two sexual gods or fertility gods. And doesn't that sound familiar? The sexual revolution wasn't a great thing for the United States. I believe we started worshiping a Baal god and an Ashtaroth god. Because you can't even market anything now, evidently, without humor or sexual things. In the last 2 weeks, we've made a deliberate effort to reach the generation that's coming behind us. The last 2 weeks, we've shut down youth ministry because we always say we're going to change it, and we never do. And the only way to change it is to stop it and start again. This Wednesday is our relaunch of our youth. If you haven't had a chance to go check out the fellowship hall, some of you are going to hate it. I don't care. Yeah, I love it. It's not finished yet, but we've changed it into a kids' church facility. The best we could do here for spending very little money and doing very little paint, tear some things down. We spent very little because our plan is not to stay here, but to move forward. But you know, we still live here. We need to teach them about God. Teach them about God. Show them in real life who He is. Not in the storybook. In real life. Who is God? What will God do for you? How will He bless you? What do I have to do to live for God for 25 years? What do I have to do to preach this gospel for 25 years? I cannot believe this year will be 25 years. I've been standing and preaching. I can't believe that. It's ridiculous to me. I did that 25 years ago. Showing them the real life how He is. Reaching out to them. Not cowering from them. But Brother Jeff, they won't listen. They'll listen. They'll listen. They're watching you. They're listening to you and your complaints and your gripes and they hear you. Love them. Love them through when they're not lovable. Love them. Let's have a quick question for our church. Will you help me change the culture? Will you help us change our city? If you really truly love it here, a lot of people say they love it here. Some people say, God help me, I love it here. And I don't mean that bad, but help me change our city. Let's reach all the generations. Let's reach all of them. But for sure, can we reach the one coming behind us? Listen, just because the statistics of Barna say 6% of adults get saved doesn't mean I'm not going to preach the gospel to the adults. I'm preaching the gospel to Jesus. Of Jesus to adults. Just because it says that all teenagers after the age of 18 or 19 years old, only 4% of them come to the Lord. Do you think I'm not going to take an opportunity to preach to teenagers and tell them about Jesus? What, have you lost your mind? I'm going to tell them all about Jesus and everything I can tell them about Jesus. Tell them exactly what He's done for me. Just because the statistics say that doesn't mean that God's Spirit's not able. In Matthew 18, 3-5, last verse. Surely I say to you, unless you are converted and become as little children, you will by no means enter into the kingdom of heaven. Therefore, whosoever humbles themselves as a little child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. Whosoever receives one little child like this in my name receives me. I didn't write it. I just read it. And Jesus said, whoever receives these little children receives me. Now, I don't know. I'm not the smartest guy. I didn't go to seminary. I went to PCG area. Okay? And so, I didn't go to seminary. But anything that Jesus is saying, I'll receive Him if I do, I think I'll be a part of that. I'm a little part of that. Opportunities are coming your way. It's up to you. What do you want to do? Just want to coast for the rest of your life? Just be like it is right now? Die and they say, oh, what a great guy he was. Or do you want to affect change? You'll be that guy that they say, man, that guy, he worked hard at it. He tried to affect change. Church, can we just be that? Can we be that church, that church of change? Can we do that? Let's do it. Stand your feet with me, please. Stand your feet with me.